Guy next to you to your left is indeed young enough to be your son. And he's the baby out of you, Billy? Yeah, he's the baby, but he's no rookie. This is a guy that's got a lot of experience already. Kyle Craker, good to have you with us. Good to see you again, my friend. And just for the record, to put things in perspective, I have lost track. You are how old now?
I'm still 16.
Still 16, okay.
Anybody?
I think I remember it. And one of the common themes across the table here, the guys talk about running carts and midgets and micros and the quarter midgets rather, and making the move to sprint car. I think at the young age of 16, I think this guy has pretty much done all of that so far, and it's been a busy career already for Kyle Craker. How about it, buddy?
Yeah, I've got a lot of opportunities to be a very well-rounded driver already at 16. You know, the opportunity to run so many different types of cars, you know, dirt midgets and now sprint cars and quarter midgets starting out and go-karts and my outlaw kart. So just a ton of different experience. It's taught me a lot.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. Kyle, I'm going to ask you to hold the microphone just a little bit closer to your mouth there. He's a soft-spoken young man. Does his talking with his driving. So quarter midgets, you were what, right around 9 years old?
I think it was about 8 years old back at this Outback track at Susquehanna. When it was
and saw the checkered flag there, what, about 30 times, I think, yeah?
At least, yeah. Probably ran there for a good 4 years, so however much experience that had, and you know, a lot of wins and a lot of top tens, but just a lot of racing back there.
Yeah, Billy was talking about his fondness for USAC racing. That's an organization that you were able to get some experience with over the last several years. You ran what, USAC Ford Focus pavement midgets for a while?
Yeah, it started out with the quarter midgets. They had a .25 series that was sanctioned by USAC, and got to travel around. That was all on pavement, except for about 4 races a year that was on dirt.
Okay.
And then when I was about 12 years old, I was able to run still USAC sanctioned pavement midget racing. So that was a lot down in the North Carolinas and South Carolinas. So I was doing a lot of traveling there. And then in the following years, I'm looking to be a part of the USAC sanctioned national midget schedule.
Yeah, and had some success there with the Ford Focus pavement midgets. I think 5 times in the top 3. That's a pretty good showing.
Yeah, I never picked up the win, but the 2 years I was in it, I had a lot of top 10s and top 5s. And then, you know, a couple of podiums, but that taught me a lot, especially, you know, 12 years old, being able to go 130 miles an hour was a big wake-up call for me, and that's helped out a lot, especially in these bigger cars.
Yeah. Tell us, Kyle, a little bit about the Dirt D2 midget. What's that all about?
So basically, it's a dirt midget, just like the same chassis and everything that they would run down in the national schedule, except with a Ford Focus motor in it, so it's making about half the power.
Okay.
And so, you know, same body rotations and, you know, similar tracks and everything, just less power. And it's a lot
get your
more
mic up there,
affordable.
buddy, a little bit closer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's good. There you go. You'll get used to this eventually, believe me. You'll be an old pro. So I'm sorry, you said like half the power?
Yeah, about half the power, but you know, the same body and weight rotations of the car, similar tracks, and but you know, only half the power, so a lot more affordable and more feasible for some people to run with.
Yeah, had some success there, had some feature wins, yeah?
Yeah, I think 3 to 4 feature wins in the few races that I ran with Brad Knopfsinger down in North Carolina in the FMR team. And I don't think I'm going to run any more of that this coming year, hopefully on the national schedule is what I'm looking to do this year.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about Outlaw Open Carts. What's that scene all about?
So they may be little outlaw carts, but they're you don't want to mistake them for regular go-karts because they're very popular down in North Carolina at a Millbridge Speedway. I don't know if you know anybody's heard of it, but a lot of famous NASCAR drivers, Enrico, Abreu, and all those great guys. Brad Sweet, I've raced against all those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just basically a little 500-pound go-kart with about 100 horsepower. So that power-to-weight ratio is insane. And on the track, I don't know what size, I think it's an 1/8 mile track, you're getting up to about 85 miles an hour, and then, you know, driving right into the turn. So just, that's probably been the biggest learning curve for me. Those types of cars have taught me the most.
Yeah.
Especially translating over into these bigger cars.
Yeah, and you're still a young man, but what happened in your early childhood to pique an interest in auto racing for you?
I'd say it didn't really have to do much with my parents. You know, my dad ran Legends cars a little bit, but
Okay.
I think it was just being so close to Susquehanna and going back there and watching sprint car racing, and then the fact that they had a little outlaw kart track piqued my interest, and I got to go back and see some races, and we got a cheap little car, and then we had a lot of people help us out, and then just it's been my story ever since.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, last year, one of the big nights, and we had lots of big nights. We had lots of big nights with the Pennsylvania Sprint Series, and when I say big nights, exciting racing, good, clean racing, a lot of first-time winners. Austin Bishop was one of the guys that stands out, but you were running the Ryan Slaughauer number 14, and I think it was in your 8th race.
My seventh race.
Put the car in victory lane. Tell us about that night.
That night was just awesome. I definitely wasn't expecting it that early in the season. My first 3 races I had to start in the back, so those were a scratch. I was able to learn a lot, learn the drivers and learn the tracks, being the first times on these tracks. And then we started being able to start a normal race, and then I was getting my top 10, checked that off, top 5, top 3, and then finally got the win that early in the season.
Yeah. It was pretty remarkable, from my vantage point in that, I remember you coming on board with the series, remember you making some progress, and progress is not unusual, but I remember the progress coming quicker than I think most of us anticipated. Maybe you weren't surprised, have confidence in yourself, and that's a good thing. But I remember, the top 10, like, wow, this is pretty impressive. And then top 5, the night of the win, what I remember most is watching you go through 3 and 4 and thinking, this man's driving with a lot of confidence right now. There's no lift, and if the car bounces a little bit, he doesn't panic, he puts it back on course, and he's back on the hammer. How'd you feel that night?
I definitely had to feel calm, and just being with these 305s, a little less power than some of the bigger sprint cars, you have to definitely be smooth is the biggest key that comes to my mind. So, being smooth and driving it in as straight as possible, and I think I started 5th or 6th in that race, and slowly picking people off, and a couple yellow flags definitely helped out, but just definitely being smooth, and then picked up the win. I was ecstatic.
Yeah, well, he says he was ecstatic. We couldn't tell, because when he got out of the car and I interviewed him in Victory Lane, you'd think the guy was a NASCAR pro. I mean, not that he was mentioning a sponsor's name every 3 seconds, but it's like he had been there before. And the guy that you reminded me of was another fellow by the name of Kyle. I interviewed Kyle Lee, late model driver. He was running up at Williams Grove in the season opener a handful of years ago. He was 15 and some change, and he won the race. He got out of the car. I'm looking for him to jump around and scream, and he just walked around, started doing his interview. And then I talked to his car owner after the fact, and the guy says, oh yeah, he's got and I forget, it was something ridiculous, over 300 wins in quarter midgets and whatever. So it's just the next step for him, and that's the impression I got from you was, you're probably excited inside, but this was a goal you had set for yourself and an expectation, and you had reached it. So you're like, I'm here, this is good, next step.
Yeah, I might not be the most outgoing, but I definitely was very excited. And I actually know Kyle Lee. I raced with him a lot in quarter midgets and down at Haderstown. So
okay.
That's very cool.
He's quite a talent. He's a fine young man as well. So you talk about aspirations on the national scene with USAC. You've got some connections right now with a pretty big name on the national circuit, guy by the name of Bob East, yeah?
Yeah, Bob East. I guess how it all started was just, running the quarter midgets, 0.25 series, and then the Ford Focus. And then we just started gaining a relationship. It started out with Brad Knopfsinger down there in North Carolina, and then started running the D2 midgets, years later, but this is just in sequence. And then he's very good friends with, and that's the chassis that they run, the Beast. And so being connected with Bob East and Frank Manafort, and especially Brad Knopfsinger, it's all coming together, looking to a good year.
Yeah, you did a little bit of competing. Yeah, you had a top 3
in Montpelier. Oh yeah, that was in a national midget, but it was a regional race out in Indiana. So yeah, that was my first time in the national car, and I got 3rd place out in Montpelier.
Tell us a little bit about the opportunity you had last year to do some testing out in Indiana with Bob. How'd that go? I mean, Talk about your relationship, the feedback, the give and take, that type of thing, the whole process.
That was out at Kokomo in Indiana, and I was able to run the night after a speed week there. So I was able to watch the midgets and learn the track and learn their lines. So the next day, you know, they prepped the track and everything, and I got to turn off some good laps and got a good feel of how things might work with Bob and Brad in the year, and I was able to build a pretty good relationship with them, and I was happy with how it went.
All right, let's come back to the Pennsylvania Sprint Series for a moment. Tell us about your plans for 2018. You're going to be back in the car. I think you've got some new sponsors and so forth for the season. Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, this year my main sponsor is Willie's Paving. I'm jogging for him this year, and my car's not here this year, but still back at the shop. You know, we're making good progress on it, and I think we're going to try and run all the races at Bapst and Port Royal, and then you know, the few at Lincoln and Williams Grove. So just kind of staying local, but getting a lot of races on the schedule.
Yeah, good. And you know, again, let me come back to something here just to summarize. We're here to talk about the Pennsylvania Sprint Series, and you say, well, why are you spending so much time talking about USAC and about this other divisions that maybe Kyle has run? Well, the point is the Pennsylvania Sprint Series is a strong operation that brings great competition to our tracks. You get a very diverse group of drivers here with different backgrounds, lots of talent, but they just come from different directions to come together to make it work. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. It's been a lot of fun to talk. I'm going to offer a public apology to Billy, because for the first race or so I mispronounced his last name, and one of the staffers at the Speedway came up to me and says before the race one night, they said, "Hey, by the way, Billy says his last name is Nye." I'm like, okay, got it. So, brother, I apologize for that, but otherwise we have a good time when we get together. So Billy Nye, John Scarborough, Kyle Craker, thank you so much. Fans, if you want to come up and say hello, maybe shake some hands, get an autograph. John's got some photo cards with him. I know the guys will be glad to talk to you. So thanks again, fellas. Look forward to the season, and thanks for being here.